What's up, grinders? Welcome back to the channel. Now, before we get started, let's address the orange elephant in the room being the goddamn wife beater I'm wearing. Yes, we call this a wife beater in Australia. Obviously, it's got a proper term, singlet. I don't know if you call it that in Britain and America. I don't know if I'm just like educating you guys on something that you already do. But yeah, if you ever hear an Australian say, hey, pass me the wife beater, then they're not talking about Jimmy who, you know, after hours, his extracurricular is beating on his missus. No, they're talking about a singlet. Okay, now that we've got that out of the way, let's talk about what I want to actually talk about. And this is the concept of damage and language learning. Now, why do I want to talk about this? Well, this is a crucial component of the ALG methodology, the automatic language growth methodology, but it is not just part of that. I see people discussing the concept of damage, or they use different terms for it in many different like language communities. And basically, if I was to summarize what damage is, it's the idea that you start utilizing the language before you truly understand or you're able to do it correctly. And therefore you generate language or you produce language which sounds foreign. Okay, that would probably be the best way to put it. And people will often point out different reasons for why this is, and I'll get into the ALG reasons in a moment. But they will point to, for example, immigrants, and I'll say, look at this person's been here for 30 years and they still sound like a foreigner, yet this person's been here for 30 years and you can't even tell they're a foreigner. Okay, what's the difference between them? And someone will go, it's damage. That's what it is. One of them tried talking before they were ready, or they tried, you know, utilizing the language before they truly understood it, and they screwed up and now they're fucked forever. When this is not the reason at all, okay? Because I've worked tutoring a lot with people, and I've tutored people who are those who sound basically native, okay? And what's the difference really? Well, one of them kept working at their language and one of them stopped. They reached a level where they were happy, you know, maybe able to communicate, get whatever they wanted to get, and that's pretty much it. They didn't see any point to continue on, and so they always sound like they've got a foreign accent for the rest of their life, okay? God damn it, there's so many goddamn mosquitoes out here. And the other one has made it their life mission to try and integrate as much as possible and remove any aspect of them being a foreigner. Now, you can go into the comments and debate whether this is a good or a bad thing, you know, should they be trying to do that, blah, blah, blah. I don't care about all that. I'm just talking about the mechanisms behind it, okay? So now that we've discussed that, let's get to what ALG talks about, the automatic language growth method, and why damage is so crucial. In fact, damage is core to the whole methodology. It's why they do what they do. They are terrified that you are going to, when you start speaking the language, speak it wrong, cement that wrong, and you will forever be bad at the language, or you'll never sound as good as you potentially could have been. And that's why the methodology exists. That's why they sit there for 1,000 hours, if we're doing Spanish, just listening to the language before we start speaking. And the idea is that you acquire the structures, the grammatical structures, subconsciously via, you know, input within the language, and you acquire the sounds of the language. And you basically, when you do start speaking, you're able to catch yourself doing stuff wrong, or you hear yourself saying things wrong. You say things and you hear yourself doing it wrong, okay? And that's why they do the way that they do. Now, the thing that drives me absolutely batshit insane about this is that in one way, they've got an idea worked out, but then they do it totally wrong in the second half, okay? Now, before I talk about why they do it totally wrong, this is from someone who's tutored many people, what I see, okay? Let's talk about why I think this is not even something you should worry about as a language learner overall, at least in 90% of cases, okay? So I see the concept of damage. What people worry about is the accent, okay? They worry about the accent or, you know, using structures wrong, but this makes up such a small portion of the language. Because what is the most crucial part if you're trying to communicate with other people? Now, if you're just watching a language, damage doesn't, like if you're watching TV or something, who gives a fuck about damage? Like, it doesn't matter, okay? Because all you care about is watching TV or reading content. But when you're communicating, this is the people that worry. But realistically, what's the most important thing? Is it worrying about whether you used, you know, the correct article or you used the correct conjugation? No, it's if you could actually communicate your goddamn ideas. That is 90+% of, you know, communication, making sure you can actually communicate your ideas. Now, should you be worrying about damage from day one? No, that's like worrying, that's like if you were an artist, worrying about whether you can get the hair follicles on the face right before you figured out how to draw a goddamn face, okay? So in my mind, rather than sitting here and studying in great depth every part of the anatomy of the face, and then once you memorized it, then grabbing a paintbrush and starting to draw, wouldn't it be smarter to just try to do the big strokes, mess up, make lots of mistakes, look back, do corrections, and then try second time, third time, fourth time until you get goddamn good at it, as opposed to sitting there memorizing every structure of every face, and then, you know, after some arbitrary amount of time, you decide now is the best time to start drawing a face, and then somehow, you know, drawing a really good face. Now, I say somehow because based on all the people that I've seen who are purist of the ALG method, I have not seen anyone who's come out of the boat, you know, drawing a perfect face, or even in the long run has a perfect face. Nearly everyone who has used this method, if I'm being legitimately honest when it comes to Spanish speakers, because I watch their content, I can tell where they're from. Like, I can pick up their accent right away. Like, I've seen some 2,000 hour, 3,000 hour ALG users, you know, speaking, and they sound good. I'm not like trying to, you know, insult them, but nearly all of them I can go, you sound American, like US American. I can hear it. And if I can hear it, obviously freaking natives can hear it. So it didn't work, okay? Now let's get back to that ALG thing and what I think they've done wrong if they actually freaking care about this. Okay, so what ALG does once you reach, you know, your whatever your deemed amount of hours are. In fact, they don't even tell you specific hours. If you look at ALG itself, they say you should start speaking when you feel like you're ready to start speaking, when things just start coming out. Okay, that's when you start speaking, and then you slowly build on top of that. But that's the problem. When you feel ready, you start speaking. There's an issue with this, okay? Because you've gone from absolutely nothing to trying to speak with sounds of a language you do not know. Now, I know what people are going to say. They're going to say, well, if you've listened to enough of the language, you're going to hear those sounds and therefore you're going to be able to reproduce them. I believe you in that you can hear those sounds. I do 100% believe that, okay? Because your ear will be able to distinguish the sounds over time via context, and it will start hearing the slight differences here and there. I totally believe that. And in fact, I've seen that in action myself, okay, with Chinese, funnily enough. But I do not believe that you'll just suddenly start pronouncing the sounds correctly. And I think this is where ALG falls over, and why so many people have such a strong American accent in this method after 2,000-3,000 hours, okay? It's because they have not practiced the sounds. They just started speaking, okay? And if you think about it, like if you want absolute proof of this, go to, say, Dreaming Spanish subreddit or any of the ALG Reddits where someone wants to ask about a rolled R. They say, when can you produce the rolled R? You will notice some people never are able to just spontaneously produce it. And it's most likely those people are exactly the same as me. You grew up in an environment which did not have it. And therefore, it's never going to be spontaneous, okay? Now, some people, for example, my brother, did produce it perfectly fine, the rolled R, the first time I showed him. And the reason being is because he's been listening to rap music since he was a young little kid, okay? And they actually use the rolled R a lot in different songs and stuff. Like, he was a hardcore rapper, okay? But me, never. I was never surrounded by it. The first time I started listening to, you know, this languages that used rolled R was probably in my 20s, realistically. And so I had to manually go out and learn it. And if you look at these ALG subreddits, you look for this question, you will see people eventually just saying, you're gonna have to practice it. Go watch this tutorial on how to say it. So if you cannot just randomly, after listening for thousands of hours as an adult, I'm talking about kids, as an adult, acquire the sound, then how likely is it for you to acquire all the other sounds that you do not have, that you're unable to produce, okay? From your native language, I mean. Therefore, I think for the majority of people, because there's always edge cases, you know, those who are very musically inclined, you'll hear about the opera singers and stuff like that. But I think for the majority of people, I'm sorry, you're gonna have to get mechanical, you're gonna have to sit down, and you're gonna have to learn tongue positions, practice with probably a native listening, and then get that feedback, okay? Now, luckily, I learned the rolled R before I started Dreaming Spanish, because I was practicing as part of Esperanto. I've never been good at it, but I learned it, okay? So I'm not going to face this problem, at least not on the same level as some people have never heard it. I probably will face this problem because I've never really utilized it in, you know, words in general. But what I'm trying to get at with this little rant is, okay, is that for a language methodology that cares so much about damage, the one time when I think you should focus on it, which is the production of the sounds of the language and learning those sounds and getting them down pat, they don't do it. They don't do it. They just start speaking. They just start speaking. Like we had that friggin' video we did a review of on this channel. Guy did 2,000 hours of incomprehensible Chinese input, okay? He was able to produce some stuff, really, really limited stuff. And he was able to produce some of the Chinese sounds, but he still couldn't produce the sounds. He was still screwing up tones and stuff. He was still freaking making so many mistakes, okay? After 2,000 plus hours. Now, obviously that's not equivalent to ALG, different methodology, but it gives you an idea that it doesn't matter how much you listen to something as an adult, sometimes you just gotta sit down and practice those sounds. And if you're gonna sit down and practice those sounds, why not do that from the moment you start speaking, so that when you start learning more and more words, you know, you start building it out and automating those words, you automate them correctly. That just blows my mind. That for a method that's so worried about damage, they don't do any shadowing. They don't do any of that stuff from that day they start speaking. You have spent 2,000 hours listening to this language, trying to get the sounds into your head. You're able to distinguish them, and yet you don't do any active practice of those sounds. It makes no sense to me. And don't give me that bullshit about you're going to just acquire all the sounds, because we see it's not happening with other people in the community. Like, you can hear their accents coming through strong as day. I can hear the fucking American accents coming through. If I can hear it as an intermediate, you know, understander, because I can't say speaker, I don't speak, as an understander of the language, then obviously that doesn't work. This methodology there needs to be updated. I'm actually kind of fearful for when I hit 1,000 hours that I have to follow this method, that I'm trying to think of a way to stay within the confines of the method, but also make sure I'm doing the sounds correctly, okay? Because I just know if I just skip over that, I'm gonna sound like some goddamn Esperanto speaking Australian freaking Spanish speaker. I just know that's going to happen, okay? Because I've already seen the comments of people saying, you know, the few times he has produced stuff, it basically sounds like Esperanto or something in between, you know? Yeah, that's my little rant about that. So basically, in summary, what's my thinking on this? One, you should not care about damage. Because damage is like worrying about the finer details without getting the overall picture. But if you do care about damage, and the one point you should care about it, is getting the sounds down pat. And that's the one time the goddamn methodology doesn't care about it. Anyway, I've had my rant. I'll see you all next video. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I gotta get out of here. Mosquitoes attacking me. It's getting windy. I'm gonna get attacked by a Tasmanian devil. Yeah, bye.